Well, if anyone doesn't know, I'm Patrick Coble. I'm a independent nerd out of Nashville, Tennessee.
And I'm Jordan Gibson. I was independent. Pretty much, most of you guys know me. The main thing that's changed is I've joined Nutanix as of 3 weeks ago. So no longer independent. We're both CTPs though. I'm a co-leader of the Kansas City CUGC.
I'm with Nashville with DJ.
And that's pretty much about us.
Yep. I don't have a cool picture like him, so but it's pretty much the same.
Just slides for a couple of seconds because people on YouTube ask me, what was that slide that just flagged? Yeah.
All right. So here's basically some of the main things we're going to kind of try to get into. I could probably do 15 or 20 hours of speaking on some of these specific things because it goes so deep. But this is kind of what we're going to try to go over. We'll just kind of catch up. We did this last year in Orlando, and I presented at CUGC XL. Jarni's talked about it. We've done the Security XL event. We've done a couple other events where we kind of try to focus on it. Joe's done some security stuff too, presenting about VDI security and some of the things that go in there. And our goal is to just shed light on some of the dark side. People just think next, it's going to work out, right? You shouldn't do that. You know, there's not a silver bullet or adamantium or the infinity gauntlet or anything that's going to be one thing that's going to take away all your problems. It is hundreds to thousands of things depending on the size of the organization to be able to do it, even in just the one little thumbnail of just VDI EUC space, right? There's a lot of stuff, right? Windows is complicated.
And to add, so Patrick, your first time presenting was at EDE Orlando, right?
Yep.
And so got him to present then because he does a lot of stuff. So put him there. There's a lot of stuff around the security stuff. Very smart guy. But at our XL event for Omaha and Kansas City, he did a pen test with Citrix session, which was really good. So encourage him to do an updated one for the next EDE because it's a really good session. Yeah. And it wasn't recorded, so.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You know, since that's all I focus on, it makes it my number one priority. So Windows hardening, first phase. I mean, we all know optimize the image. You need to reduce that attack surface by turning stuff off, right? There's lots of awesome tools. These are the top 3 of the world that everyone can go shake their head and say, yes, I've used that. It did not catch on fire. Yes, that works. Those policies are great. And then probably Login VSI is the center of that world because they do all the performance testing and they go deeper into it so you can actually know things are working the way it's supposed to. So with all their testing and Project VRC, we all know, you know, that is a big reason why you want to do it for performance, but it's also for security.
Yeah, you can get other tools too, like there's custom Powershell scripts out there, there's the BP analyzer. Yep. The main thing about this is optimizing the image is not just for performance, for scalability, for all that kind of stuff, but it also, like I said, turns things off you don't need to help reduce the attack surface. So it's performance and security aspects when you're optimizing your images.
Yep. And so, this animation has failed me. Oh, no, that was good. That's basically the screenshot of each one of those, right? So, next, patches. Gots to do them, right? If you're not patching, you're going to always have problems. It's amazing when I go do security assessments for a lot of these places that some of these in-app servers, virtual desktops, VMware Horizon, Citrix, RDS, months behind. And it's because of fear of it's going to break the application, it's going to break the OS, it's going to break PDS, it's going to break this, it's going to break that. But would you rather get your environment broke into, right? So you might have some data that might be worth some money at your environment. So definitely patch. Automation is key.
Yeah, automation here is key with patching, making sure you have some kind of process to go through and do your patching, do some kind of testing, verification, and then roll out. There's tools like out there like Eric from ZenetBlock has the automation framework, SCCM, MDT, PDQ deploy, getting PowerShell scripting you can do to automate a lot of this stuff too. Make sure you have some point where you can roll it back. You can get things automated, tested, just making sure you're using automation to help you out, do your job better here. The other thing too is, when you're doing these security patches, not only checking for application compatibility or application issues too, but there's a performance impact at times as well. An example is recently I had with a customer, there was a 1709 patch earlier this year that came out that dropped performance and scalability for Windows 10 a lot. Through the patch, that performance scalability came back. So is not only just patching to fix holes, but that patching can also cause performance issues as well.
And that goes back to what a couple presentations have talked about with like Uber Agent, and even if you think about Login BSI, some of the other people in that space, and Control Up, is that's why you want monitoring, that's why you want trending. Login times were always 42 seconds, now they're 72 seconds, right? After I did that patch, right? So trending and data collection is very important because that's how you may spot these things. You may not spot it because something doesn't click. Yes, sir?
And we BSI just launched a tool today, a new application called application testing,
Yeah.
Yep.
which is really, really good at it for Facebook.
Which
Yep.
one? Can you say that?
Log on AT.
Log on ET.
Login IT.
Can you say that again?
Yeah.
Yeah, Login AT, that's a good point, Sam. Login AT, they just came out with, I actually caught the webinar this week and looked at it a little bit, where they can go and launch the application, kind of do screenshots of it, do comparisons, and alert you if something's changed or there's an issue. So from like an application side testing, it's a new tool they released to help with that.
Yep. So Windows 10, lots of versions coming, and Windows 10 Server 2019, even in 2016, is going to kind of change our games. We're not going to be on 2008 R2 for 5 to 10 years, right? We're not going to be on 2012 R2 for 10 more years, right? The builds are coming, and lots of patches are coming there. When you look at the server OSs, it's insane. When you have 1,000+ patches back, depending on what you're doing and the hardware and the platform. So you're talking about a whole ton of stuff, and you got to keep up with it. And if we can just make it to 2042, then we'll be good. When we get to Server OS 2042, all will be well with the world. It's the answer for all things, and it'll be good. But for now, there's lots of patches to keep up with and lots of builds, and that's to a lot of points that we're talking about. All Windows 10 builds and even Server 2019 and some of the things that are coming and 2016s are not equal, right? There are features that are only in this build and then carried on. So don't think that your 1607 LTSB is the coolest thing in the world, even with it fully patched.
Yeah, the main thing here is that if you're looking at the slides here, is that every version of Windows 10, they've added something to improve security or add some kind of new security functionality to the image. So we're seeing things from BitLocker to Windows Hello, Credential Device Guard, VPN conditional access, and then when you get to 1803, even
Yep.
showing more, or 1709,
even
and then
more.
showing more, and then 1803, even more from that. So
Yep.
they're constantly adding more security functionality, adding more options, and improving what they've done in previous releases.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any recommendations at which point to stop patching and start installing further builds?
So for me, what I try to do, if customers can do it, they have the automation, is every time a major update comes out, at minimum do a fresh build then. So 1803, 1709, do a fresh build then. There's some customers who have things automated enough to where every time they do an image update, that's a fresh image each time. They're automating the full build, so every time they
Yeah,
do any
that's-
kind of
that's that
NCS push
image
or
warehouse.
PBS push,
Yep.
So that's
it's a fresh
usually
build.
as a trend, right? Instead
Yeah.
of buying it up.
Yep.
But at a minimum, doing between the major builds of Windows 10
Yeah.
when you want to do a fresh image.
Yeah. And Windows by default upgrading your build for you, right? This was something that anyone probably 10 years ago would have been terrified that Windows 95 just went to 98, right, on its own, right, and then went to 2000 and then ME and all that, right? So these builds, we have to pay attention to them now, and it definitely changes the image management game, which makes it a little more complicated for testing and patching and automation, right? You got to kind of be on top of it.
Yeah, and each build too, doing some kind of performance testing, scalability testing, also to see if that impacts your scalability numbers and your density on your hardware that you're deploying.
Yep.
You're using something like AppLayer and breaks that technology.
Hopefully, right? I've had a couple people that had everything layered because it was a couple EMR apps, and they did a fresh build from 1709 to 1803 because they thought, okay, let's just do this. And it was not just next. They had to redeploy and rebuild the package on 1803.
No.
Right? And so your mileage is going to vary. So, but layering can help you and help obfuscate and slow that down.
I know it's not easy. You kind of have to go with the upgraded treadmill. But just to be fair, it's not just security enhancements. They also add more core apps and more.
Oh,
Yes, that too as well. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
sorry, just security focus here.
Yeah.
So it goes both ways.
Yep.
When,
What I was going to say is even with app layering, there's a level of IT infrastructure for supplying that into the operating
Yep.
system. So, it doesn't change anything about testing out and seeing what the impact of updates to those apps are.
and AppLayer can help, and they're adding some stuff in there to where you can enable between different versions now in labs still. It's not full GA, but it's in labs. So app learning can help with, changing things out and that kind of stuff, but your mileage is still going to vary.
Yeah. And just like when we talk about patching, that's why I even put servers in there for bold move cotton, because I've done a couple deployments and checks where everything might be a month or two behind on the app image, but I look at a storefront server and it hasn't been updated in a year and a half since it was deployed, because it just gets lost in the sauce, right? And so you need to patch even those components, because IIS kind of has a few bugs every now and then, right? 1 or 2 a day,
Catch-22.
Was that?
There's a catch-22 to that too.
It is.
Yeah.
You talked about the latest hot fixes from Microsoft storefront last week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's live.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the 2019 and some of the .NET stuff that just came out and broke Exchange,
Yeah, a lot of things.
like it's very tough. It's a balancing act that we all have to kind of deal with.
What?
I don't think Microsoft has had a monthly release all this year that didn't break out in a major segment somewhere.
Oh,
Yeah.
You know?
And that's also go back to automation, testing, having some kind of image factory.
Right.
It gives a big lifesaver here in case you run into a bug in your environment and testing that as well. So.
Yeah. So these are kind of slides. They're modified a little bit from the how to survive a pen test. So if you're doing a published desktop, these are pretty much the top 10 things you can do. Just like we talked about before, there's not a silver bullet, but if you did these 10 things, you can drastically reduce the attack surface. Now, after these 10, there's 1,000 after, 1,000 more, right? There's thousands of group policies that you can go however far you want to go. But one of the things is when we talk about like restrict all drives, remove run, CMD, PowerShell, that almost immediately eliminates a lot of attacks of you just publishing a desktop and someone just browsing around, right? And then when we, App Locker, all administrative apps, and help programs. Help programs are the #1 way I break in and out of applications on every test I do. I go to, you publish me anything, I go to help about. There's going to be usually, almost guaranteed, a link to Internet Explorer. And then once on Internet Explorer, did you content filter your server network where your RDS servers are sitting on? Probably not. You may have not thought about that I can actually go download straight to the viruses and bot networks. You don't have like Cisco Umbrella or any kind of DNS protection. So it's just wild, wild internet. And so help is the way that I break out of everything. So if you have an application that runs your world, I implore you to go back and just go to help, hit about, and see what you can do. Because you think that you're just publishing that one application to somebody. But without these 10 things, you're publishing every application on the server and anything on the internet to be executed on your server or desktop. Yes, sir.
Where do you guys stand on local admins on the?
Oh, that's a no. So I've had a couple places that I've spent weeks and weeks and weeks to make it not like that, but that involves a lot of user rights assignments, a lot of custom variables that we're going to have to put in the registry and permissions and the Windows systems, and also using group policy to do that with file restrictions and registry restrictions to make sure that it's, if I build a new 1803 image, that those policies get applied. If you get too local, then when we do another build update, we got to start all over. So for desktops, publishing desktops is definitely the toughest. Apps, there's one less, right? Because if I can't see the desktop, right, and I can't jailbreak out of that application, there's a little bit less that I have to do, but it's still foundationally exactly the same, right? You need to make sure that if someone can get to File Explorer, Windows Explorer, they can't get to anything else. If you're publishing Internet Explorer, really think about what they need to have access to or don't need. It's huge companies, it amazes me of what's allowed. Yes, sir.
I didn't see anything about access to task manager.
Yep, so that's part of those administrative, right? So there's a whole pile of them. If y'all have been watching my Twitter feed, I've been doing like that secure VDI challenge. There's a whole bunch of that still coming, right? So I just got stuck on a couple big gigs and it slowed me down. But yeah. So cool pictures, these are basically those exact policies, right? When we talk about that #1, #2, pulling stuff off start menus, it just keeps going and going and going. If you're publishing a desktop, this is your absolute favoritist section of group policy. Because if I can do file new shortcut, I can get to anywhere on your network or the file system on the server if you haven't restricted any of those things. So creating an item on a desktop might not seem like a big deal. It's huge. That's exactly how I get in. You publish me a desktop, I won't even go to whatever your application is. I'm just going to right click on the desktop, new shortcut, and make it to whatever I want to. And the way HTTP works, I can actually dork it out to a PowerShell script, and I can execute a remote PowerShell script from a DNS entry or even from just some random hosted website. So this is very important. It's not something we have to just gloss over.
Now, one thing here too as well, these are all in group policy too, and if you're using WIM or Workspace Environment Manager, these are just check boxes. So you can check, 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 and lock all this down without having to use group policy as well.
And even like a Medio, right, UEM.
I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but do you guys supply ADMs or ADMX files that we could access?
I don't know.
I use built-in stuff where I use WIM.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that if you guys had all this configured, you can export the files.
Oh yeah. So export, import, yeah, but not actually. Yeah, that's what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, I think I've gotten close to coming up with a decent setting group, which is about 500 or 600 for published desktop, but it's constantly changing, and it's so specific to people's environments. I couldn't get them to whitelisting, right? There could be almost no whitelisting other than the default Windows applications, and then you'd have to take it the rest of the way.
Yeah, because it's going to vary by environment. There's some basic stuff you can do, and export, import, but a lot of times it's going to be based on the design architecture of the environment.
Yeah. And then the start menu, desktop, publishing a desktop, immensely important.
Did you have a question?
Good.
Well, what is a good? What end user? There will be some users to say.
There's always going to be some users. Yes.
What about that?
Yeah, so it's a huge balance.
I noticed that they're good, the IT perspective.
Yep. So
some users just don't get it.
Yep. So one thing that really stinks is when I go to some of these places and we do these types of things on the security side, is they've been running like this for 10, 15, 20 years. They've always been able to hit file new shortcut, right? It's in like their help documentation deep down in SharePoint. It's like, oh, if you can't get to the share file, the UNC path, go new shortcut. I'm removing new shortcut. I don't want you to map a network drive because I guarantee you have not secured your SMB networks. There's permissions that are hanging out there that just like everyone full control to see the share, everyone full control to create files and folders, right? So it's really tough. I've went to a couple places that even in the mitigation control plan, when we got done, we were like, hey, we're going to do all these cool things. We had to take things off because they were like, the users are going to revolt if we do that. I'm like, okay.
Yep.
Good luck.
Brian, remember Brian said FUIT kind of,
Yes.
find ways around that.
So this is for VDI. I can get this for RDSH maybe more. If this is for VDI, how's this different than the traditional desktop? I mean, like...
You should be doing these same things for traditional desktops in your corporate network, right?
Yep.
Yes, that is a very valid point.
But in your corporate network, like, is that a thing anymore? I mean, like the whole... Are the networks out in the world more like Wild West open networks versus... You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Are people on a corporate network with trusted device? I mean, they're close to everything.
Some are, some aren't. I do have some customers that treat like the users coming in, anything they come in on as an untrusted device, even if it's corporate owned, they kind of secure that off and make them come through like Netscaler Gateway, some kind of secure access, but you still want to lock down the session they're getting into to make sure they're not doing something malicious in your environment.
It's about like pivoting, right?
Yeah.
If you're hosting your most critical application in one of these solutions, you don't want someone to get into there, be able to siphon DLP data out, right? And you don't want them to be able to go to other things in your network and your domain and your forest and all the other things out there.
Like if you're like an energy customer, what's
Yes,
that?
publish apps.
Yeah.
I guess it's more for published apps than for like full VDI desktops.
Yep.
Right?
And depending on the culture that's been set for your VDI deployment, if people have already had a virtual desktop that's already been locked down and they've never been able to do any of these things and it's not part of their workaround and standard operating procedures, it might not be a big deal. A lot of these things I've implemented in places and no one even knows. They get one ticket with 10, 15, 20,000 users. So it's not, some of them can be done very gently, but it's a balancing act, no doubt.
It's also a training thing too.
Oh yeah. So one thing I had posted about it earlier is, people will stop PowerShell, but they won't stop PowerShell ISE. right? So that means I can just edit my script while I'm executing it and have good syntax and make sure I can run it and check it before. Yes, sir?
Right, well, we're carrying a lot of conversation on the Encore. Google has got this approach to basically every device is untrusted and for access to service and data. What's going on with the microsegmentation story? Follow up with Brian's comment as well. We're seeing microsegmentation plays where you're actually assigning rights to the individual user as they're coming in and consuming these resources. Bob, the administrator, can access this element of the network across the support range of activity, and Susie, the task worker, only has visibility and more communication across this range. And you're seeing automation come in if the machine starts kicking up communication, it's not qualified for policy, grab it, be isolated, we hold it for the CSI.
Quarantine it.
So what's going on in that capability?
I see more and more microsegmentation going on, right, in a couple big deployments. Pretty much all NSX, very little ACI. Most people are terrified of it. A lot of people are buying 9Ks and just running it in Nexus because it's like, I don't know if I want to set up my contract so DHCP works, right? So it gets so granular, ACI does, that you can't even get a virtual desktop to boot after you deploy it if you don't set a contract up for DHCP. But yeah, microsegmentation's been going. I'd say this year I've seen the most of it. A couple very large deployments with NSX and a couple big things going, but it's going to take time. And if anything, your microsegmentation is going to start in the data center, but I would hope one day there's a lot of school systems and stuff like that that would love to have that NAP, network access protection, on their switches with NSX microsegmentation to make sure security-wise that you can't just go plug into anything and get to anything based on your user identity.
And like what he's saying, I'm starting to see microseg a lot more and more in projects, especially with how NSX has been advancing some of their features and starting to see other technologies as well being used. But it's definitely a growing use case we're starting to see on customer deployments.
Yeah, the network insight that VMware bought is probably the best thing they could have bought, because you can visualize what's actually going on in your distributed switches before you start making rule changes, right? So you're not going to just, make a resume generating event, right, when you deploy it, right? That's kind of awkward. It's a deal breaker. So that was probably the best purchase. Yes, sir?
Do you see microsegmentation as like the future to remove, to me, looking at these 500 register keys you got to do everywhere, and always stand up with every kind of different. That's a lot of U.S. Air Force security, where we're really good at protection against yesterday's threats. Do you see something like microsegmentation?
I hope it's the future.
Replacing this in the future?
I don't think you're going to replace it, because it's still a Windows OS, right? You're still going to need to do all these things to Windows, but then you're still going to need to protect your network.
Yeah, there's still some stuff you have to do.
I think it's going to have to keep growing, because if anything, if we think about ransomware and the way it goes out and hunts for SMBs, if you don't have any microsegmentation, your whole network is at risk, right? If anybody remembers Blasterworm and stuff like that, I was at a very large multinational client when they got hit, and they literally had to call 3 data centers and say, unplug the network cable, because it was spreading so fast across their SMB networks. So that was awkward. Microsegmentation could have kept it and
could have contained it.
Could have contained it, could have quarantined it, and especially with some of the AV vendors and some of their integration into it, you can truly quarantine a device as soon as a threat is detected on the Windows OS, cut it from the network. Hey, user's going to call in, but thanks for calling in, because we caught you, right?
Yeah,
we
so
slow stop it.
My thought is you're still going to lock down some and do some stuff, but I think microseg is going to help things a lot, along with some of the next gen AV stuff like the HVI introspect stuff.
Oh yeah.
Especially on the ransomware and that kind of stuff too.
But is it what Romeo is not what's all about, is it?
Chromium, because it's like advanced threat protection, right? It's like trying to be smarter than the average bear, not just use signatures, look at things, look at the hash, have I seen it before, is anyone else running it, and trying to do more, and looking at PowerShell and other things too. So.
Are you seeing a lot of Chromium in the field?
No, I'm just trying to understand why Romeo is not coming. We talk about this.
I haven't seen a lot in the field.
I haven't either.
Neither did I. Apparently it's kind of like
I see more silence because it has a big marketing campaign, even though you can bypass it with a couple simple methods.
The last time I asked was like a closed product. We don't really do retail.
Yeah. It has it's very niche still. It hasn't taken off like other vendors.
You think the more government?
Yeah. It was very highly secure, so there wasn't a lot of talk about it.
Yep.
It's
So,
process level
Yeah.
installation.
yep. So one thing is make sure if you've got Microsoft Office published, these are the default open and save should be your number one goal to change, especially if you're using restrict all drives. If you're using restrict all drives and you're hiding all drives and you have a default open location in Microsoft Word, you go to that default open location. You browse the directory. If you just hit the, my computer, you're going to go back and you can't see restrict all drives, but you can hit the back button, right? So this is where if you put this in like a temporary, and there's restrict all paths, right? Another one is don't display what's new when you're doing upgrades, because what is that? That is a link to Internet Explorer or whatever browser, and you probably didn't secure that, right? So don't give Internet Explorer to things you don't want Internet Explorer, especially if you're not controlling it. All these, where we talk about all the default paths, check all the applications when you're doing these settings. Don't just check the one Microsoft Office application you have, because in some cases I can download Visio Viewer and now my default path isn't checked because you're like, hey, I'm never going to install Visio on those servers. Check all of them, right? It's 1 kilobyte of data on your servers, right? Do that. And these restricted paths, use something in a user profile. Don't use anything that's persistent. Don't use a file share, right? Ransomware goes to SMB. It's hunting for SMB, right? It does a netstat to look for it before it does it. So if you do a path that's on a share by default, it means that share will get infected.
Yep.
Now, if there's other users' data, that could probably be a problem. If it's just their user profile on a throwaway instant clone desktop or PBS desktop, who cares, right? Not a big deal, right? It's going to get thrown away. I don't need to retain it. So Microsoft Office is, there's hundreds of settings too, right?
And then Security Compliance Toolkit, it's a tool that you can use to go through and scan GPO, scan your environment, your recommendations, on security pieces on your Windows desktops and servers. So another good tool that Microsoft has come out with, supporting the different Windows 10 editions to give you some help in looking at those.
Yeah, and you have Baseline Analyzer. You got a lot of stuff from Microsoft. Microsoft, if you haven't noticed, if you pay attention, they've really stepped their game up on security. There's lots and lots of stuff they keep adding, hence the Windows builds, lots of PowerShell things so that we can actually log PowerShell, know what someone's executing to the point we were talking about with Uber Agent. Like someone's got ps.exe open, what are they actually doing in it? Hopefully nothing bad, right? That's all we're hoping for, right?
Yeah, so I mentioned WIM earlier. Who's using WIM in here today? Couple hands. So, WIM, if you're using Citrix, you got enterprise entitlement or higher with their latest maintenance schedule stuff. WIM's a good tool to use. If you use AppLocker through Group Policy, they've taken AppLocker and made it a lot easier inside of WIM. You can actually enable the app or export AppLocker from Group Policy rules and import those into WIM, push them out that way. The main thing when you start with this is that you want to do it like in monitoring listen mode first before you start bulk applying, because you will get some headaches in that way. So the main thing is audit mode, and just being able to block and allow. And like again, you can export and import from your existing AppLocker.
Definitely. I mean, AppLocker is a great product. This just puts a different UI, and if you're already using WIM to do other things, it's all there.
Yeah, I had customers who weren't using AppLocker today, and I started showing them the WIM side of AppLocker, what you can do, and getting them used to WIM, and they found it a lot easier and actually started using the AppLocker functionality, application security functionality in WIM that covers the AppLocker piece.
Yep.
Other things too, application security, you have a wizard in here to go through them. There's things like that, simple things you can go through, find the process DLLs, all that kind of stuff. Again, like I said, you can import the rules into there. You can look at the event viewer to see those. And then make sure you only set the policies on one side. Don't set an AppLocker in Group Policy and in WIM, because you'll have a lot of problems.
Yep. Yeah, it's Highlander style, only one can win,
Other things too in WIM, you can do, under security also, you can whitelist and blacklist processes. There's also some CPU clamping. This actually saved the customer one day because you get a run rate process that can actually cause a denial of service and start taking your Zenap servers down. A couple months ago, I had a customer who was, for some reason they watched a bunch of streaming videos and I forgot what it was. It wasn't the World Cup, it was before the World Cup. They were doing something where a lot of their user base was watching videos in Internet Explorer, and they started taking down servers because it was the processor up. So we deployed this out during that time, and we kind of saved them from causing denial of service in their environment because we were able to clamp down what iExplorer was doing.
Yep.
For the World Cup.
It was something else. I can't remember what it was, but it was before the World Cup. What's that?
Pornhub.
No, it was.
Well, Wimbledon, yeah.
No, it was something in the U.S. and I forgot what it was. I have to go back, but it was like back in like I think March time frame. Maybe was it March Madness? March Madness.
FS Logic's webinar.
It was right that. It was March Madness. That's what it was. March Madness was going on, and that was causing a lot of problems in their environment. So that was a big thing there. WIM is a great tool to use. You know, and like I said, if you're on enterprise or higher and you have the latest customer or whatever the maintenance is they have now, they keep changing it, but you have access to WIM, so use it. Even from performance and a lockdown piece and security right there.
Yeah.
You don't have to use the contextual stuff at all. You know, when I start with WIM with customers, is mainly performance, GPO lockdown, and the security stuff are the main things I do with it. You know, to show them that and profile management stuff. But I started taking profile management out of it, and that's another reason, but that's a different story.
That's a whole other presentation.
Yeah, whole presentation. So
if you've got the Citrices, you know, LTSR and now CU3, right, and then 718, there's definitely a lot of differences between there when it comes to security. So some of these features don't exist in previous versions. CU3 is coming, isn't it?
Coming, it's not out.
Oh,
CU2 's out.
July something. But yeah, so SSL encryption for UPS, that's kind of a big one. The watermark is really cool. Daniel Feller did some of that stuff coming up. Some of the dynamic session recording that's event-based is very cool, so that you can actually record when an event hits. And then logging within there. So end-to-end encryption. This is, you know, kind of a generic one of where we put our SSL certificates, but, you know, show of hands, everyone probably has that SSL certificate on their gateway out, right? Everyone probably has it for a receiver too, right? Because we're using SSL on the same VIP. But who on storefront is just doing an SSL offload and there's no SSL in between there? Now there's pros and cons, right? I mean, every mileage can fail, but there's not, almost all that's HTTP, right? And then XML, who's ever doing SSL for that? SSL relay and all that?
But that's becoming a practice.
It's becoming a practice.
It's a growing use case,
If you
yes.
done it for 20 years, sure.
That's right.
But right now, it's kind of, most people won't deploy it.
And then the same thing with STAs, right? Doing that also. So we're making sure that I can't see half the token, right? There's not that many bits to guess. So there's lots of attacks and possibilities within there.
A lot of the reason people don't do the storefront to control it is they don't make it easy.
They do not? Yes, they don't.
I don't make the VDA easy either.
No, they don't make this easy either. It's very annoying. It's not a wizard-driven anything, right? So if we were talking about VMware View, there's a lot simpler, or Horizon, a lot simpler SSL deployments to be done.
It is now.
Yeah,
it is now.
Yes.
Security servers, connection servers, yes. Yeah. So clipboard security, I always have this because people don't really think about it. Everyone has clipboard allowed and they don't control any formats. So that means I can paste pictures. So that means I can actually make a picture with steganography with data in it, paste it into a Citrix session, then execute it. So changing it to text is probably a thing that I've done at lots of places and you can do without anyone ever caring. So definitely do that. Don't leave this blank, right? Put CF text right there. So not a hard thing to do. It's very good. A lot of places I've deployed it at, no one knows, not a big deal. And I love this. I love browsers, right? This is, you know, I do phishing campaigns. This is exactly how everyone clicks. You clone a website with a social engineering toolkit. If anyone's ever heard of that, it's called SET. But basically, I can clone a storefront web page, send someone a login, and say, hey, your password's changed. Can you log in? It has their logo on it. They click on it. It's a keylogger through the whole time. Username, password, bada bing, it's done. And I just have a domain that I paid, you know, $5.99 to do this on, right? So it makes it nice and easy without even dynamic DNS. So Secure Browser is a very cool product. Being able to have the trusted and untrusted, because you don't know what you don't know, right? For sure. And this helps you make that list and enforce it to make sure things that are shady aren't executed or traversed from your network. User mileage will vary. You got to be used to tabs. I mean, we've talked about tabs many times. It's opening a new tab, so that's how it does it with its HTML client and all that. So it takes a little bit to get used to, but it's a very, very cool product. And that's probably just all the stuff. We can kind of skip that. You want to go session recording here?
Yeah, session recording, so just event logging, this is the newer stuff, going through it and showing that. Be able to set the event type in there.
Yep.
The nice thing what they're doing with session recording too is a lot of the stuff too is now at first going to be done through Powershell, and that's because it's going to tie into the analytics piece they came out with that we're going to talk about earlier, to when you go through and do your analytics actions. When someone's doing something, you can actually do an event-based session recording to record on demand.
Yep.
So that's the newest thing, newer session recording. Now, for me, for the most part, over session recording, when I was back at Call Smart Auger, I mainly deployed it for help desk and troubleshooting. But a lot of companies, I work with, also use it for compliance and security as well. The main thing here is you have your server, you have the agents and your VDAs, you have a player somewhere, a database, and a console to set that up.
Yeah.
But this is going to set up nicely for what they're going to be doing with analytics.
Oh yeah. So you're able to control all this and then play and look at the events you're looking for. So if you're looking for ps.exe, when someone opens it, now you can see what they're actually typing if you don't have Powershell Logging enabled with all the other features. So it's definitely pretty cool. Just a couple settings that make it happen. If you have it, I would definitely try it.
It's a platinum entitlement, so.
Yep. So Citrix Cloud, it's changing, right? Azure Government, all that, right? We can skip by this. Everybody knows about FIPS and 508 and all that, right? So if you're dealing with government clients, they can actually do stuff on there, which is super cool. But this is something that's new. That's
access
pretty
control is new. They're kind of overlapping a little bit with what Okta does. Not really totally replacing Okta, but they're able to do things with SaaS apps and stuff, and visibility analytics to that, and also tie into the analytics service as well. So it's something newer, and this is available now, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So I wasn't sure if it was out yet.
Yep, so it's a really cool, it's gonna hopefully be a better way, because right now, just like many other VDI solutions, you have to administer things in multiple places, right? So you've got NetScaler policies, you've got storefront policies, you've got your delivery controller and all that. So there's lots of things that go on there.
Go back to that real quick, and one of the things too with when you get into companies as they're going to more SaaS-based stuff, and they're saying, where does Citrix play in the future? This is kind of helping in that future role where Citrix is growing on some of the access control and security side.
Yeah, they're trying to get in the cool SAML Kit Club, get their punch card. So watermarks are really fun, but it's not that hard to set up, and there's lots of settings that you can do. But within there, once you've got it enabled, it's real hard to see because you can make the transparency very low. There's been a lot of big deployments that I've done that people are like, well, someone could just take a screenshot, or take a picture, especially when camera phones came in.
Yeah.
And when people were working in governments and the SCIFs, right when cell phones came out, people would still be in there because they didn't have a camera, right? It was just like, oh, someone could be talking, whatever. But now when you go to a secure facility, it's like, oh, put your phone here because you can take a picture. Well, now if you take a picture, you can at least do it. But, Daniel talked about this at Synergy. It's going to take more bandwidth, right? Every little picture, doodad thing might be a bob that you're going to send down there. So you want one? Do you want this 5 here? You need to really test. This is where having a monitoring solution is key, and this is where
especially end-to-end monitoring.
End-to-end all the way to their pipe, right? Because it can definitely do that.
Yeah, but the bandwidth synchronization that they showed was just mentally increasing.
Yeah.
And if you look at the people connecting through the internet, that for some companies they just say, it's increased so much that it doesn't make sense for us because they have to upgrade the whole infrastructure.
That's right.
Yep.
Accommodate this.
It makes me wonder when I saw some of the performance data that Daniel showed at Synergy was, are they like giving like a 300 DPI like TI document or something like that? Because I don't understand how it's so much more, but
I'm not really following it. What does the watermark do? Just if they take a picture, there's something they're showing this.
PHI, PPI, PCI.
Is this a checkbox basically?
It's a checkbox. It's a feature enhancement from a couple years ago. Yeah. Make you feel good that if someone did take a picture, post it on Twitter, you know who it is and what their IP was.
Exactly.
Right?
You know where it came from, how it got out there. You can go and
most people taking these pictures still aren't going to post it on Twitter. So it's
It's really authenticating the stolen data, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. So if it becomes down to a crime, they could rate it all the way back to the user. That's all you're really going to get.
Like I was saying, the main thing is can you do this? Checkbox. Here you go.
Yep.
So
Citrix Analytics, I think we can kind of breeze through this because I look across the room. A lot of people are probably very good experts at it already, and it's coming.
Yeah, the main thing is showing that somebody comes in, their score changes, you can see what the score was, go ahead and click next.
Yep.
Then you can see, you can apply rules based to
Always.
that, including session recording, so you can kick off recording on demand, and then kind of, apply things, conditions to it based on what happened. That's the big
Yep.
thing with analytics.
Yeah, and your mileage is going to vary on cloud, on-prem, your NetScaler versions. If you're using Moss already, not using it, like there's a couple more things than one golden chain. It's you got to get a couple things to make this all happy and work there. So NetScaler Gateway, probably the same thing. We can kind of breeze through this. Everybody knows about smart access, smart control, all that. Access controls, tying all those things together with analytics to make smart decisions. If someone's all of a sudden never downloaded 20 megabytes over their Citrix session, now they're doing 20 megabytes, we can kill their session, add multi-factor, record their screen, and then do whatever else we want to do, disconnect their session. So NetScaler Gateway, everyone's familiar with, you come in from this source or these requirements, you can only see this. You can't get to the PHI if you're on a device that doesn't meet these things, right? So it's cool. Anybody deal with smart cards in government? It's more better now, right? So that's cool. I'm trying to make sure we're on lunchy on time, but if you're not logging some of these things, you're number one for performance, number two for troubleshooting, but number three for security. If you talk with the security team, obviously it's number one, but it's very important. I've been at places where they've had incidents, security incidents, and it was just not like a espionage where someone broke in, but when someone did something that ransomware infiltrated and no one could make a kill chain, no one could figure out where it started, how it got there, did anything because they weren't logging anything on their VDI deployment, right? So
The main thing is just tracking the source, trying to figure out just to stop it from continuing further and slapping someone's hand.
Yep.
Yeah, but sometimes the back with logging is that the logging incorrectly configured. It's like back in the days,
Yes.
Yeah.
what do you call it, what was before, the directory. And also a great tool.
Oh, Ssl, yeah.
Ssl, exactly.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then people say, oh, I have to log in, then bang,
Yep.
it's there.
Yeah, the main thing is that what that was trying to find it, or not keeping that environment up to date, and making sure it's being pruned and kept
Yeah.
up properly with Ssl.
Yeah,
which
its
I've ran a couple
transaction
times
logs
too.
would grow out of control,
Yep.
Yeah.
SQL goes down, it's not doing anything.
So basically what you need is syslog for stuff, right? We have sysloggy things and we have Windows thingies. The key is, I think, just remembering this back here. Everyone will kind of go like, that's too much logs, these are cool, those are not. But then people forget the back-end application they're actually launching. You might want to make sure you're logging that. The SQL database, the file servers, the Active Directory controllers. The only way you're going to detect like Mimikatz or something like that is if you're logging everything that that AD server is doing.
Do you consider it essential to have a logging system we all report to, or you just have them on so you can go and
The logging system.
A logging system will be good as long as it's being managed and kept up
Yep.
with. And usually, in most times, if a company has a logging system, it's the security team that's been really good on administering that. Some environments depends how many hats that person wears.
Yes.
So it all depends on where you go.
And how mature your security team is, because sometimes,
Yeah.
to your point, there might be 50 people, and then that's when you
Or it
definitely
could be one
have
guy.
Or it's one dude.
Yeah.
That is
Or
really...
I shouldn't say one guy, one person.
Yeah.
So,
So if everybody's probably seen this, y'all know your words, right? So Splunk, Logarithm, and Elk probably big, but you got other players in the game. But the thing that number one cost entry is the problem of just cost. And the next thing is getting licensing from Splunk of how much data do I need? Do I need a 5 gig license, 100 gig, 70 gig? How fast is it? Do I have the servers? Do I have the storage? What's my retention?
Yeah.
So sometimes you're trying to boil the ocean when you're logging, but just start off small is probably the most important thing.
yeah, a lot of customers like to do is pick a use case and then grow from there, get that down, and then figure out how you're going to expand and grow from there.
Yep. So if you want to look at a very awesome write-up on log consolidation and on setting up a free logging thing, right? If you can't afford this, I know you got your Splunk 500 megs and stuff like that. This will go to gigs and gigs and be good, and it uses Elk. And some people hate it, some people love it, some people develop around it. But these are all their presentations on how to deploy it, and some of the things they've caught are on this URL. So this is a great one. And PowerShell logging. Turning this on, these 4 on, almost no one does it, right? So no one logs it. And now when we have computers and even servers that have very large hard drives, it's not like this is going to take up huge amounts of space now. So clicking it is very good. And if you want to actually see what people are doing in PowerShell, there's Microsoft has it, and then even Black Hills has that too, right? So there's lots of good information out there. If you're using PowerShell a lot and PS remoting to administer your server with like Control Up or something, turn on logging at least on those, right? So you can see what PowerShell's happening there. Don't try to log PowerShell on your whole deployment all at once, because it won't end well.
Pick a use case and grow from there. The
Yes.
same thing.
Yeah.
I always lead customers into.
Yep. So yeah, we're almost done. So default policies are not what I would call secure, right? I can copy and paste anything into it. I can execute things. I can get data in. I can get data out. Just pay attention to it.
Yeah, if you're just using the default policy out of the box, you're not secure by default, which hopefully they would change this to make you turn it on. It's going to make you turn it off.
Yes.
And so feedback we give a lot to them too as well, is like, make this secure out of the box. Make us turn stuff on instead of turning stuff off.
Yep. And then probably there is, you guys know your clients. I mean, how many people are domain admins at their clients and or your environment? Might not want to raise your hand.
Or like, who is not a domain
Who is not a domain admin, minus the users, right? The users aren't domain admins. We don't go that far. But cut that down. You don't need that. You can be a Citrix admin, be a local admin on each server, so you can do everything you want to, PBS, even Horizon and all that stuff, right? Just be a local admin. You do not need to be domain admin. I mean, it's just, it gets kind of bonkers.
Another thing too is separating out your admin account from your regular account, like the first bullet point says, because I've had customers get burned by that, where the regular account is their full admin account. They click on something wrong in email or in a browser, and all of a sudden stuff starts spreading to their environment. So I've just seen that happen with the customer.
If you got domain admin access and you're checking email, you're going to have domain admin problems, right? Because that's how fast it's going to go, right? Your Kerberos token is game over and it's party on. So lots of references, Carl and policies. If you're ever looking at that, Citrix has some stuff, VMware has some stuff. There's lots of good things. You need to pay attention to it. That's probably all. I mean, I think we've done pretty good.
Yeah.
We didn't go too crazy fast. Yes, sir.
You didn't really touch on, I know basic, but antivirus and agentless antivirus specifically.
Yeah, so we had it on one slide talking about Bitdefender and there, but yeah, we had done that at E2E last, and I did it a little bit deeper at that pen test one. But yeah, antivirus is definitely there, and is a very important thing.
Your last section is on the YouTube, right?
Yes. Yeah, so it's on there. Because a lot of people didn't do antivirus for a long time because of how much impact it had.
Some people still don't.
And some people still don't. And that's fine. If you're doing some of these other security fundamental things and no one else can execute anything or run any PowerShell or execute command prompt, the likelihood of an attack goes down drastically, and or spreading it or executing it. So I can see it still, but there's lots of very advanced ones, right? Like Trend and Bitdefender and things like that integrate into the hypervisor. You have to pick the correct hypervisor for them to do it in. But
I like the HVI stuff, but hopefully they expand out to other solutions a lot better to what they do as in-server. So,
Question, this 2018, which AV sucks the least?
Oh, it'd be Microsoft Defender. Yeah. I mean it does a great job. It's low overhead. In most cases, depending on your license agreement, it's completely free. It's baked in, built in. And if you're doing all your other security things, it's going to take care of it. And they used to have like ESET and things like that too.
A lot of the Microsoft stuff too we talked about does integrate with Windows Defender, the Advanced Protector stuff too as well. So all those stuff we showed that's coming in the newer builds of Windows, the ATF, the Office stuff, all that's all Windows Defender stuff.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of Cylance.
I'm starting to see Cylance.
Yeah, they got a great marketing team. It's a really cool product, but
I've gone through pain with a similar product like Cylance. I'm not going to mention their name, but I've gone through some pain with them at customers.
Yeah,
so,
there's
I think you know what I'm talking about. You probably see me in the Slack channel saying
maybe I should just make that of like the AVs that I've seen play nice and the ones that have caused it to catch on flames, and I make it slide.
Double-headed sword.
Oh yeah, well I mean,
you have to run in compatibility mode if you want it to work. Otherwise, if you run it normally, it will break.
Yes. Yeah, and then PBS versus MCS and Instaclones, right? A lot of these things don't play with provisioning technologies based on their UIDs and all those things, right? So
so the main thing there is making sure that whatever non-persistent image management you're using, the AV plays nicely with that.
Yep.
When you talk about agent or agentless, you know, if you're using MCS, PBS, instant clones, link clones, making sure that AV vendor plays nicely with those.
Yep.
That's a big key.
Yeah,
Until your agent is agentless.
I find that the IO performance impact, which are from log and DSI, have determined to be 30%, right? Agent versus agentless.
Yes.
You know, it's so significant that I try to use agentless anywhere. And as far as what brand of agentless, well, Trend Micro is out there first in deep security, so they have the most go product. But really, my approach is, if I come to a customer that already has an antivirus and that antivirus has an agentless version, then I try to stick with that agentless version.
Yep.
So they don't have to
Agreed.
change theirs. But if they don't have it, then I go with deep security.
Yep. That's it. Let's get some grub. Thank you guys.
Thank you.